The three Ashtari sisters moved through the grand hall, their violet skin glinting under the eerie golden lights cast by the floating orbs that lined the great chamber. Vikara, the eldest, kept her expression firm and almost indifferent, her shoulders squared with a subtle power and grace. Her younger sister, Leani, moved with her chin raised slightly, her piercing white eyes scanning the curious eyes of the nobles as they parted before them. And at the end of their trio was Nira, the youngest and most light-hearted, with her eyes as bright and quick as an ember, flickering with something that bordered on mischief. The three were close, and together they had achieved an unparalleled reputation in Ashtari society as diplomats, warriors, and visionaries. Still, they hadn't come here to bask in the admiration of their peers. No, tonight they had come for him. Across the floor, dressed in an understated uniform, stood a lone human tall, his frame carved by years of battle, with unassuming green eyes that had, over the past few months, won over hearts from the most guarded of alien courts to the front lines. His name was Eli Mercer, a name they had grown to know far too well. When Eli had first been assigned to the Ashtari, their parents, members of the High Council, had seen it as a minor act of diplomacy, a way to placate the human delegation and assess their intentions. What no one had anticipated, least of all Vikara, Leani, and Nira, was that this quiet, almost boyish human soldier would capture their hearts with the ease and precision of an arrow finding its mark. Leani was the first to approach him, her lips lifting in a delicate smile. Eli she greeted, her voice soft yet with a force that cut through the noise of the crowd. Eli turned, recognizing her immediately. There was a moment's hesitation before he returned her smile. Leani, good to see you again. Nira stepped forward, pushing a stray lock of her hair over one shoulder, her sharp eyes studying his face. Why is it that you always look so displeased to see us, Eli? Eli's brows raised slightly, his face flushing a faint pink under the sharp gaze of the Ashtari sisters. Displeased? No, not at all. Just surprised. Surprised, Leani echoed, intrigued. Are you saying we're not predictable? I would never say that. Eli managed to chuckle softly. Predictable is the last word I'd use. Vikara, the eldest and most reserved of the three, observed him silently, her dark, intense gaze unwavering. As the evening progressed, she kept her distance, letting her sisters engage with him. But her eyes never left him, and he seemed to feel it, glancing her way every so often, though she only returned his gaze with her usual calm. Vikara knew it was dangerous, the way she felt toward him. But there was something irresistible about the human's resilience, his quiet intelligence, his adaptability in a galaxy that could be so unforgiving to those unprepared. Eventually, the conversation shifted to the galaxy's political struggles and the growing friction between their two species, but what the sisters truly wanted remained unspoken. They wanted him to see beyond the battles and negotiations, to recognize their hearts beating fiercely for him. Leani finally excused herself, suggesting they all return to their quarters. It was late, after all, and Eli was due back to his unit the next morning. But the sisters had already decided they would not let him leave without a glimpse of what their feelings for him truly meant. The next day, Eli found himself summoned to the council's arena, an open circular court surrounded by the Ashtari's most renowned nobles and warriors. His heart thumped, unsure what was about to unfold, and as he stepped into the center, he noticed the three sisters, each dressed in armor, standing in a half-circle before him. Vikara was gripping her twin daggers with a steely calm, Leani wielded a long staff that sparkled with a faint glow, and Nira stood unarmed, her stance deceptively casual. He swallowed, straightening his back. To what do I owe the honor? Leani's expression softened, though her tone was severe. Eli, the council has been observing your progression among us, and they think it best to test you before they permit any further talks. They believe you must understand our ways before continuing as an envoy. It was a diplomatic way of saying they would challenge him, test his combat skill, and make sure he wasn't a liability. He knew this was likely more of a pretense to intimidate him out of his station, but he wasn't about to be dissuaded. The sisters took their positions around him. Leani's eyes sparkled. Do try to keep up, human, she teased. Without warning, Nira lunged at him, faster than he would have anticipated. He twisted just in time, dodging her attempt to grapple him as Liani swung her staff from the opposite side. He deflected the blow, barely keeping his footing. Vikara's voice was calm, almost instructional as she advanced on him. "You have good instincts, Eli, but you'll need more than instincts to last here." As the fight continued, Eli realized just how evenly matched they were, his skills honed from years of war put to the ultimate test. The three sisters moved as one, complementing each other's moves with a synergy that took his breath away. He could feel his muscles tiring, but he'd be damned if he gave up now. With a final burst of energy, he deflected one of Liani's attacks, sidestepped Nira's feint, and locked eyes with Vikara as he parried her final strike, stopping mere inches from her heart. They were all breathing hard now, and an electrifying silence descended on the arena. Vikara's steady, dark gaze softened, and a faint smile played at the edge of her lips. "It seems you've earned your place here, soldier." The crowd around them murmured in approval, but Eli barely registered it. He was lost in Vikara's eyes, the intensity of her gaze thawing in a way he had never thought possible. Over the next few weeks, Eli found himself drawn to the sisters in a way that felt nearly impossible to control. Each of them offered him a different side of Ashtari culture, and each one had a unique hold over him. With Vikara, he shared quiet moments discussing battle tactics, hours spent in training that left him aching but oddly alive. Her respect for him, he knew, was not given lightly, and each hard-won word of approval made him feel as if he had conquered a world. Liani, however, pulled him into a different orbit. She brought him to Ashtari ceremonies, whispering their meanings as they watched the galaxy's finest traditions unfold. They would sit, hidden away in grand halls or at the edges of starlit courtyards, and talk about the politics and beauty of the galaxy with an openness that surprised him. Liani saw through him in a way that was gentle but inescapable, her eyes like stars in the night, pulling him closer to a feeling he couldn't name. But it was Nira who was the most unpredictable of them all. She would lead him through the marketplace, laughing at his bewildered expressions as he tasted exotic Ashtari delicacies or tried on strange fabrics. With her, there was no pretense. Nira challenged him to games, to races, to bouts of laughter that left them breathless and clutching their sides. He couldn't help but feel at ease around her, even as her teasing hints and sly glances left him dizzy with an emotion he couldn't ignore. Yet as time went on, he began to sense a tension simmering between the sisters. Vikara was always courteous, but a flash of something unreadable would pass over her face when she saw him with Liani. Liani's normally calm demeanor sharpened when she caught him laughing with Nira. And Nira, usually playful and carefree, grew solemn whenever he would mention his training with Vikara. The storm broke one evening at a council meeting, where Eli was to give a briefing on recent developments in the ongoing human Ashtari negotiations. The hall was filled with nobles, and the three sisters sat side by side, listening intently. Halfway through his report, a senator, a high-ranking Ashtari official, who had made it clear he didn't trust Eli, interrupted. "You speak well, human," he sneered, "but words only go so far. The Ashtari require loyalty and strength in those who walk among us, not just smooth speech. Are you truly committed to this alliance?" Before Eli could answer, Liani rose, her voice firm and proud. "Eli has shown more courage than any of us could have asked for. His loyalty has been proven time and again." The senator smirked. "Ah, but I wonder, is it loyalty to the cause, or simply loyalty to you?" A murmur ran through the crowd, and Vikara's eyes narrowed. "Our judgment of Eli's worth is not yours to question. He is a soldier and an ally, and he has earned his place among us." The senator tilted his head. "So each of the Ashtari's famed daughters is now a human's champion. How amusing. I wonder what the galaxy will make of that." Nira's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. "Better a human who has earned our respect than one who cowers behind insults. Eli has fought alongside us, he's risked his life, and that is more than can be said for some here." The senator, his pride wounded, cast a venomous look at Eli before retreating back into the assembly, but the tension in the room lingered. Eli could see the barely restrained jealousy simmering in each sister's gaze as they glanced at one another. It was no secret now, at least not to him. They each felt for him in ways that went beyond respect, beyond duty. Later that night, Eli sat alone in his quarters, torn by the impossible choice he faced. He cared deeply for all three sisters, but he knew that choosing one meant breaking the hearts of the others. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at his door. Vakara stepped in first, her usual calm replaced by something more uncertain. She was soon followed by Liani, and then, reluctantly, by Nira, who refused to meet his eyes. He felt the weight of their presence as they stood before him, each as conflicted as he was. Liani spoke first. "We wanted clarity, Eli. It's not fair to any of us to pretend this can go on without an answer." Nira nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "We each care for you. But this isn't just about us. It's about the honor of our house, of the Ashtari. We need to know." Vakara's gaze was steady, though Eli could sense the depth of feeling behind it. "Say the word, Eli. If it's me, if it's any of us, we'll respect it." The room grew unbearably silent as Eli took in the intensity of their expressions. His heart ached, each beat a reminder of the love he had come to feel for these alien sisters. But in this moment he understood something else too, the true cost of his presence here. They wanted him to choose to be theirs, but they would always belong to one another first, bound by blood, tradition, and duty. And perhaps, he thought with a heavy heart, that was how it should be. After a long silence, Eli looked at each of them, his voice soft but resolute. "I came here to be your ally, your friend, to help our world see each other with new eyes. But I know now that I can't be what each of you deserves. You deserve loyalty, honor, and love without compromise. I don't think I can give that to just one of you." The sisters watched him, each struggling with their emotions, and slowly they nodded, accepting his answer. It was painful, but perhaps in some ways this was the ending that they needed. The three sisters left his quarters that night, their bond perhaps strengthened by this shared heartbreak, and Eli, despite the sorrow he felt, was grateful for the experience that would forever remain etched in his heart. They would all go on to shape their worlds, to wield power and bring peace in ways none had anticipated. And though their paths diverged, the memory of that love would remain a quiet strength, forged in loyalty, honor, and the undeniable power of choice. The months after Eli's decision were quiet, almost unnaturally so. The Ashtari court, which had once been rife with murmurs and speculations about the three sisters and their human ally, moved on to newer intrigues, shifting their gaze from the strange romance that had almost bloomed in the heart of the galaxy. Eli, in turn, threw himself into his work. The bonds he'd forged with the Ashtari people ran deep, and though he now kept a respectful distance from the sisters, his loyalty to their cause remained as unwavering as ever. As tensions between the Human Alliance and the Ashtari Council flared once more, Eli was called to the front lines, appointed as a commander of a joint force, a mixture of both human and Ashtari soldiers. His reputation had grown, his courage and honor earning him the respect of both species. The Council's acknowledgement of his loyalty was its own quiet nod to the respect that had developed between him and the three sisters. The battlefields became his world, a harsh reminder of what he had left behind, and yet he found a strange peace in the constant action. For a time he heard only fleeting reports of the sisters' activities. Vakara had been appointed head of the Ashtari vanguard, Liani was advancing as an influential diplomat, and Nira's bold endeavors were revolutionizing the defense tactics of their people. They were as brilliant as ever, their power and influence growing with each victory. One night, as Eli's forces returned to base after a hard-won skirmish, he was summoned to the command chamber. He walked in, brushing off the dust and blood of battle, only to find the three Ashtari sisters waiting for him. Vakara, as always, spoke first. Her expression was impassive, but her eyes held a rare warmth. "We've come to request your assistance, Eli. We've uncovered troubling intelligence, a splinter faction, working to undermine the alliance from within." Liani's voice was calm, her words carrying an undertone of urgency. "It's a delicate matter, Eli. The Ashtari won't believe it coming from one of us. They'd assume we were acting out of personal loyalty." Nira stepped forward, a spark of her old mischief dancing in her eyes. "But you, Eli, you're trusted. You've built a reputation as someone who fights only for what's right. We need your help." The request was heavy, laced with implications of betrayal, espionage, and political sabotage. Eli hesitated, the weight of their trust filling him with a mix of pride and apprehension. "You know I would do anything to protect the alliance," he replied carefully, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "But this sounds like more than just another mission." Vikara inclined her head, acknowledging the challenge. "It is. We will need to confront this faction from the inside, root out their leaders, and expose their lies before they unravel all we've built." Without another word, Eli nodded. Together they devised a plan, plotting every detail of their approach. For the first time in months, he felt the familiarity of their presence as a balm, soothing an ache he had long pushed aside. Their unspoken trust, the silent unity of their purpose, it filled the spaces left hollow by his solitary duties. Over the next few weeks, Eli worked closely with the sisters, infiltrating the secretive faction, exposing corrupt officials, and shining a light on hidden plans meant to incite violence between humans and Ashtari. Each sister played a part, their combined efforts weaving a net of strategy and influence that ensnared the traitors in their midst. As they moved through the web of deception, the sisters' old affection resurfaced, slipping between the cracks of their focused alliance. And for Eli, the past lingered in every touch, every lingering glance, each as bright and bittersweet as starlight. The night the final coup was set in motion, they were alone together, hiding in the shadows of an ancient Ashtari temple. Their last target was the leader of the splinter faction, a powerful Ashtari noble who had gathered a small army and was planning a staged attack, one that would frame humanity as the aggressor and shatter the alliance for good. Eli, cloaked in Ashtari robes to disguise his human appearance, held his breath as the traitor strode past, and Liani whispered, "Now." Vikara leapt from her cover, swift as a shadow, her blade cutting through the air. Eli and Nira struck in tandem, disarming the traitor's guards, while Liani recited the charges, her voice echoing in the temple halls like a judge pronouncing sentence. The skirmish was quick and precise, ending with their quarry subdued, the evidence of his treachery secured. As they watched the guards haul the traitor away, the four of them stood in silence, the long journey they had taken together feeling suddenly fragile and precious in the dim light of the temple. Nira broke the silence first, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ellie, what happens now?" He looked at each of them, the weight of the years and unspoken words sitting heavily in his heart. "We go back to our lives, Nira. You have your own path, as do I." Liani reached out, her hand a comforting warmth on his arm. "You could stay, you know. The council would welcome you." But he shook his head. "If I stay, I won't be the man you each respected. I'd become someone divided, always longing for what might have been. You deserve better than that." Vikara, who had stood quietly, finally spoke. "And if we told you we would wait? That perhaps there's no need to choose between honor and love?" Eli's breath hitched, the hope in her voice striking a chord he had buried long ago. But he knew the answer had already been written, like the stars mapped across the Ashtari sky. "I'll always love each of you in my own way," he replied softly, "but our worlds, our duties need us as we are now. Strong, undivided, whole." The silence that followed was filled with understanding, yet tinged with sadness. In that moment, they all accepted that their lives would be intertwined not by romance but by loyalty, honor, and a love that would always remain just beyond reach. They walked back to the council together, not as lovers but as allies, bonded by a battle fought and won side by side. As Eli departed that night, heading back toward his unit, he looked up at the Ashtari sky, feeling a profound sense of peace. The sisters would be part of his story forever, and though he could never fully call them his, they would remain bound to him, and he to them, as distant stars bound together by the pull of a shared universe. The next day, each of the sisters took their place in the council hall, watching as Eli's ship faded into the horizon. And though they would go on to accomplish great things, shaping the galaxy with their influence, they never spoke of the human soldier they had once loved, holding him instead as a bright and enduring memory, a love shared and cherished, hidden away in their hearts like the most precious of treasures. And for Eli, no matter how far he traveled or what battles he fought, the memory of the three sisters would remain with him, a silent vow woven from loyalty, respect, and a bittersweet love that would never fade.